Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're talking about some new palettes from Lorac Cosmetics. We have not talked about Lorac on this channel in far too long. Lorac has been pretty quiet for a while, and it seems like they've been working on a bunch of new palettes, new formulas. They have reintroduced the Pro palettes. If you've been a beauty lover, if you've been watching makeup YouTube for a while, then you will certainly know what this is. This is the original Lorac Pro palette. This palette has been with me for a very long time, and I think you'll be able to tell the mirror in the palette's broken. It's all just dinged up and dirty. This is really an OG staple makeup product. A lot of people were doing project panning with this. This is pre-ABH Modern Renaissance type of stuff right here. So it's a pretty big deal. It's kind of like reinventing the wheel when it comes to the Lorac Pro palettes. So I picked up two of the palettes. There are two mini palettes. There's also a Mega Pro, which is another very OG staple makeup product. I'll bring out one of my Mega Pro palettes from the days of yore here in a little bit. I decided to pick up these two Pro palettes. I ordered mine from Ulta. These are the Soleil and Noir palette. Of course, they're currently available because I bought mine from Ulta. They are $35 US. So these Pro palettes have a new look. They also have a new formula. So let's take a look inside these palettes, and then we'll do kind of a comparison with the old school Pro palettes as well. The packaging on both of these palettes is that soft touch, velvety, matte type of feeling. These are a heavy duty cardboard and they have a magnetic closure. Both palettes have a mirror inside. Here's the inside of the Soleil palette. It is half matte and half shimmer. And one thing that I noticed right away is that the shade names are no longer printed inside next to the pans. All of the previous Pro palettes did have the shade names. Personally, I prefer that. I know that's not a big deal to everybody. It definitely makes beauty YouTube harder. It makes things like tutorials more difficult, swatching more difficult. And from a non-beauty YouTuber perspective, I think it looks a little bit cheaper when it's all blank inside, but that's just, again, my personal preference. The shade names came on this little slip of paper that was sort of stickered in on top of the shades. And it's a good thing that this was in there because the new shimmer formula is so soft that a couple of my shimmers had cracked. Not completely busted, but cracked. And this paper held them in, so I guess that's a good thing, but it's not my favorite way to label the shadows. This is the inside of the Noir palette. Same type of format, but a different layout. In the Noir palette, it's just one row of mattes straight across instead of that half and half. We're just seeing one row of mattes and then two rows of shimmers. The Noir palette is noticeably more neutral, whereas Soleil was warmer, and this one also has more deep shades. Before we get into comparing these new Pro palettes to the OG Pro palettes, let's take a look at a bunch of swatches of these new palettes all on their own. I want to show you both finger and brush swatches of each palette. The swatches are done on the inside of my arm with no primer down first. The finger swatches will be pictured on top, and then each corresponding brush swatch is directly below. As always for my brush swatches, I'll be using my e.l.f. flat eyeshadow brush, and I'll clean the brush off in between each shade using my Veramona color switch. That way there's no transfer between swatches. So let's go ahead and take a look at all those many swatches now, and then we'll get into the comparison. We're starting with the Soleil palette. We have Warm Vanilla, Pink Beige, Nectar, Opal, Soft Pearl, and Aurora. Next up, Sand Dune, Morocco, Cinnamon, Quartz, Mirage, and Desert Rose. Lastly, for the Soleil palette, Red Cedar, Saffron, Ash Brown, Mojave, Warm Honey, and Euphoria. Now for the Noir palette, the top row is Ecru, Soft Taupe, Sable, Burgundy, Smoke, and Ink. Next up, White Diamond, Whisper, Primrose, Lust, Silver Moon, and Rendezvous. And the very last row in the Noir palette, we have Stardust, Dahlia, Whiskey, Onyx, Majestic, and Black Violet. So when we compare the old version of the Pro palette to these new Pro palettes, obviously the first thing that you notice is that there's a different shape, a different size. Personally, I really prefer the new size. It's still slim. I think it's even more travel friendly. It definitely feels more updated, a little bit more modern with this shape. Now you can see what I mean if you've never seen the inside of the Pro palette before. It did used to have the shade names inside. I miss that. I wish that they had kept that feature. Pan shape and size is the same. However, the updated Pro palette does have significantly more product per pan than the old Pro palette. So the old version has 8.8 grams total product and 16 shades, which means these were 0.55 grams per pan. The new palettes have 16 total grams of product and 18 shades, which means these are about 0.89 grams per pan. So significantly more shadow per pan in the updated style. This does have 2 extra shades, but I noticed from holding them both at the same time, this one feels significantly heavier. It just feels more weighty, more sturdy. It doesn't feel like a brick or anything, but I notice a difference in the weight of the packaging when I hold both of them in my hands. The real question here is, how is the formula different? Is it really updated? Is it noticeably updated? Thankfully, Lorac has decided to make the comparison pretty easy for us because there are some recognizable shades in here. We've got some re-promoted shades in these new palettes, so I think the best way to compare the formulas is to take these shades, same shade names, that have appeared in previous palettes, and let's just swatch them side by side. I haven't done this yet, so you are going to see my raw first reaction. There aren't a ton of re-promoted shades. I noticed 8 just looking through the shades here. There may be 1 or 2 more that I missed, and I don't have all of the past Pro palettes, so I can't do a complete comparison, but I do have a handful here, and I think it'll be fun little experiment to just swatch some of these shades side by side, old formula and new formula, and see if they're different, if it's better. Maybe it's the same, I don't know yet. We will have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this palette's pretty old. So we just have to keep that in mind, but I'm just doing the best I can. So the shade Sable appears in the, it's still just soft and amazing as ever. I love this Pro formula, so I'm honestly a little bit nervous that they're messing with it. That's the original Sable, and then this is the new Sable from the Noir. Oh, it feels different. Yeah, it does feel different. So let's see what happens. This is the original Sable. And here is the one from the Noir palette. That's the original Sable, and then this is the new one. They definitely feel different. Yeah. I didn't notice it when I was playing with these palettes on their own, but they definitely feel different. At least they're the same shade names, but these are not the same shade at all. The Pro Metal, this is one of the mini palettes, had this shade called Onyx in it, and I remember this not being my favorite. The Onyx that's in the Noir palette is not the same at all. It's not even the same color. It's not the same texture. Pro Metal. Yeah, I don't love that. It's a matte with glitter. And then here's the new one. Okay, so right now it's 1-to-1. The old Pro Sable was nicer than the new Sable, but the new Onyx Makeover is a lot better. The shade Soft Pearl from the Pro 4. And then in the Soleil palette, this is Soft Pearl. Wow, feels completely different, completely different. All right, let's see what happens. That's the original soft pearl, and this is the updated soft pearl. Definitely different shades, definitely different textures. This sort of reinforces my feelings that the updated shimmers are way better than the old shimmers. Here is one of those Mega Pro palettes I was talking about. We're looking for a shade called Cinnamon. Ooh, another shimmer. People went nuts for these things. I don't know if you remember that, if you were around back in the time of the Mega Pros, but people went crazy for these. Okay, so the cinnamon in the Mega Pro 2 was a shimmer. The cinnamon in the Soleil palette is a matte. This comparison is not really going how I planned, but here we go. Both nice. It's definitely the same color, it's just a different finish. I don't have a lot to complain about. That matte was a lot better than the previous matte that we swatched. I think I have one more. We're back to this little Pro Metal palette to get the shade Quartz. This feels soft, but just not as foily feeling. Then the shade Quartz in the Soleil palette is this one. Completely different. Completely different. Good thing this is the last one because I'm running out of arm. Okay, didn't really turn out as I planned, but it was an interesting experiment nonetheless. Let's talk about this new formula versus the older formula. I have for years been a huge fan of the Lorac Pro formula, and when I heard they were messing with it, it made me a little bit nervous. I will say I notice a difference in both the mattes and the shimmers. The mattes are still super pigmented, but they do feel a little bit less buttery. I know that might sound like a bad thing, but because they still have such nice pigmentation, I think it's actually a little bit more user-friendly because the previous Pro mattes were so intense and so creamy and pigmented that they could be a little bit difficult to work with, especially if you didn't want a really intense look or you were a beginner and you're not feeling very confident in your eyeshadow skills yet. So I do think that the updated matte formula is a good change. It was a good move for Lorac because I do think this is more user-friendly and makes these palettes a little bit more accessible. They're still really high quality, blendable, they stay true to color on the eye, they look nice, easy to work with. I can see anybody from a makeup artist to, you know, a first-time makeup user enjoying this matte formula. I was kind of on the fence about the mattes not being that really creamy, buttery, hyper pigmented mattes, but the more I've played with these palettes, I've still been incredibly happy with the application, and I do think this was a smart move. Now, the shimmers are a huge improvement. It was love at first swatch. It took me a minute to come around to the changes in the mattes. The shimmers are intense, super foiled. I haven't experienced any issues with them falling out on my face. I don't notice that they're creasing and wearing away. Sometimes when you have those really, really foily metallic shades, they tend to have a lot of moisture and then shades like that will crease a lot. These have been staying in place beautifully. Formula-wise, I'm totally on board with this new Pro revamp. I already mentioned, you know, I have some pros and cons with the packaging. I like the new shape and size. I like the heft of it. I am not pleased to see the shade names disappearing. Now, my biggest gripe though with these palettes is the shade selection. I know they are lovely neutral palettes, and neutrals are super useful for the casual wearer, a makeup artist, somebody who's doing really intense looks, everything in between. A great set of staple neutrals is a wonderful thing to have. But why so many? Why did they do so many neutral palettes? They even made the Mega Pro neutral. The minis are neutral. These ones are neutral. It's all, why? Why did they do that? I really, really think these two palettes could have been one palette this size. Especially because a lot of these shades are just really, really close. The 9 shimmers in the Soleil palette could have been 4 shades and we would not be missing anything. These are so mid-tone, pinky, gold moment that it's really lacking depth. It's lacking variation. Of the two, I think that the Noir palette is more interesting. We're getting a little bit more variety shade-wise. We have fewer mattes and yet a better range of mattes. I don't know. We've got a really light, a really deep. We've got some cool tone options. We've got this reddish shade to warm things up. Down at the bottom in the shimmers, there's even this hint. It's like a whisper of blue and purple. This one overall is the more interesting palette to me. And again, very repetitive. These sort of mid-tone goldy silver shimmers. Why? These two should have been merged into one palette this size. It would have been a lot more useful and frankly it would have been more interesting. And then they could have come out with another palette that was more colorful. And I'm not even saying Lorac should do a rainbow palette or a duochrome palette. I'm not, let's not get crazy here. I know that's not on brand for Lorac. Imagine these two palettes merged into one palette this size with this mixture of warm, cool, light, dark, shimmer, matte, neutrals. Then imagine another palette that has a little jewel-toned theme. We could have some purple, some burgundy, some soft pinks, maybe an emerald green, maybe an orange or a gold. Nothing crazy. I'm not expecting neons and lime green and duochrome and glitter, but just a little something to spice it up. Just a little something spicier. I'm feeling very torn on these palettes because I like the update in theory. I just don't like the shades that they chose. They feel very repetitive. They feel very done. And I know that Lorac is this kind of staple foundational brand, a very makeup artist brand. And I love that. They do a lot of things right. They don't pump out a ton of trendy releases. They put out a couple things a year, and those things tend to be really high quality, really, really useful. And I love that. But I think if you're going to come out the gates and say, we're revamping this really well-known product, you have to add a little excitement to that. I just feel like it was really a missed opportunity to do a little bit something more, even just give us some burgundy, some navy blue, I don't know. I could have been excited about that, personally. We're getting a great value, the per gram value's great, the new packaging feels luxurious, it feels on brand. I just get upset about it because I care, because I really like Lorac. I like the formula. I want to love it. I want to be like, but I can't. I kind of can. I don't know. Who's buying neutrals? Are you in the market for a neutral palette? Maybe you are. I'm not here to judge you, but I feel like the people who are watching me already have at least 2 neutral palettes. I do think these are great palettes. I just don't think that the color story was right, especially not around the holidays. All I will say is if you are in desperate need of a new neutral palette, 100% recommend these. I prefer the Noir palette. I just find it to be a little bit more interesting. The price is right. The formula is great. I want to love it. I want to. Now's the time when I want to hear what you think about these new palettes. Are you interested in this updated formula? Are you really excited for neutrals? Maybe I'm totally off base here and I'm just missing the mark with this opinion. I always love to hear what you think about things too, whether we agree or not. I hope you will leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Look, this has... No, we have no time for this. Somebody left a comment that was like, why do you always say US dollars? Well, because people in other countries watch this, and there are also Canadian dollars, so, you know, I just try to nip that ambiguity right in the bud, you know what I'm saying? Somebody send help. Okay, I'm getting distracted by my smoky eye. What's new? Is to compare. I don't understand. Why? I know they can do it because look, we have purple, we have blue, we have coral. Just a little something. Just a little something to get the blood flowing, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, it's so neutral. Everybody has staple neutrals already, and I don't know. I don't think people are in the market for 5 new neutral palettes. Lorac, what do you have to say for yourself, okay? The people want a little spice, Lorac, come on. I can't decide if they're gonna like block me on all socials or like email me for a chat about color stories. Probably neither. They're probably never gonna see this. It's, I don't know. I'm fine. I'm fine. It's fine. I'm fine. Okay? Okay. That's it. Have a great day. Thank you for watching. I love your face so much. Okay. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.